And now let's go through each part of the basic sentence in order. Let's begin with a subject. Subject is your actor of the sentence. It's usually a noun, and in fact, 2/3 of the English sentences begin with the article the. And if your Jackie is reading a sentence and if she doesn't find a subject right away, she's going to go looking for it. A subject could be a personal, animal, or a thing. For example, the word knowledge can easily be the subject of a sentence. Knowledge is an important component of your education, or knowledge comes from reading books. I'm sure you get the picture. Knowledge is the subject. Now, I want to talk a little bit about different types of verbs. There are four major types of verbs that grammarians separate. The first verb is the verb to be. I like to call it the equation with to be. To be is an irregular English verb which can be conjugated depending on the subject and the tense. The examples are like this. This is a novel. The verb here is is. He was late. Was is the conjugated version of to be. I am here. There's a second type of verbs is a linking verb. Linking verbs are words like feel, seem, become, and the main job of a linking verb is just like it sounds, it's to link the subject and the rest of the sentence. The examples look like this. They seem upset. This feels right. His wife looked doubtful. Another type of a verb is an intransitive verb. And don't worry about the definitions of these verbs. It's not really important. But what's important about this is intransitive verbs do not require an object. As you can see here in the third slot of a basic sentence structure, here we have a complement or an object. As it turns out, some verbs require an object and some verbs don't. Let me give you a few examples. He lied in the meeting. He would be your subject. Lied would be your intransitive verb. That means there's no need for an object. And in the meeting would be a prepositional phrase, which is the fourth part in your basic sentence structure. The driver sneezed loudly. The driver is the subject. Sneezed would be the verb. Loudly would be the complement. They arrived on time. They would be the subject. Arrived would be the intransitive verb. On time is a prepositional phrase. Now, the last type of a verb, it's the transitive verb, the verb that requires an object. For example, she invited her friend to the party. If we just left the sentence at she invited, it'd be really unclear. Who did you invite? She invited her friend to the party. And you don't really need another person for the transitive verbs. You can actually just use yourself. I invited myself to the party, or he invited himself. They peeled an orange. You can't really leave the sentence after or put a period after they peeled. They peeled what? They peeled an orange. She changed the topic of a conversation. I'm sure by now you're understanding what a transitive verb is. Always requires an object. It's really important for Jackie to know this because once she identifies a transitive verb, she's going to immediately go searching for the object that corresponds to this verb. And let me give you a few examples of an additional phrase. Additional phrases can look like a prepositional phrase. They begin with a preposition. In the sentences that you saw earlier in this lecture, we saw a few prepositional phrases. Remember that sentence about the trains? We had a phrase on young people. On is a preposition, and on young people is a prepositional phrase. Another variation of additional phrase is a verbial phrase. To be especially tough. To be is a infinitive. So to be especially tough is an additional phrase, which is a verbial phrase. I hope you have a basic idea what's going on in this basic sentence structure. And what's interesting is I always recommend that my students, whenever they lose their comprehension, that they always try to go back to their basic sentence structure. Because as sentence structures get more and more complex, they can actually grow. Sometimes they grow to the right, sometimes they grow to the left, sometimes modifiers and little sentence structures interject between a subject and the verb, which makes it very difficult to catch the relationship between the subject and the conjugated verb. And the more complex these structures become, the harder it is to understand the sentence. And my usual advice when your reading comprehension breaks down is to try to go through the sentence and keep looking for those important parts, for those four things. What's my subject? What's my verb? What's my complement or my object? And what is my additional phrase? In the following video, I'm going to show you a sentence that is quite complex, and I will give you a limited time to get through that sentence. And you can use this basic structure to help yourself get through the sentence and understand it quicker.